Welcome back to the character component of the Samurai 7 Retrospective. With 3 of 7 samurai explained, it's time to make it 4 of 7. And today, we will do that by analyzing the character Kyuzo. Now Kyuzo is a very interesting character to look at, since he barely talks and isn't what you would call a central character of the series. That doesn't mean he's useless, however, and that doesn't mean we can't learn anything from him. He can still teach us quite a few things, like how much louder actions speak when compared to words, and how one must always balance the need to live for oneself with the need for living for one others, and how we should all try living. Now Kyuzo is introduced in episode 5, as a samurai enforcer working for the local magistrate, Amaro. Now Amaro has several samurai enforcers, so this isn't too odd, although they all seem either disconnected to their employer or borderline psychopathic. Anyways, Kyuzo seems to be the most skilled by far, and soon engages Kanbei in a fight, although he refrains from killing him after Kanbei acknowledges the skill and strength and ability that Kyuzo possesses. It seems that this is the first time anyone really seems to address Kyuzo as a person, and not just a tool. It is here that Kyuzo vows to one day fight Kanbei to the death, one-on-one. After this though, he kinda just tags along with Ukyo as he pursues the group, doing so up until the point where they all get to the desert. It is here Kyuzo betrays his dishonorable employers, and he decides to join the main cast. Again, it should be noted that his motivation for doing so is to protect Kanbei so they can fight to the death one day on their own terms, and so that he can, in his own words, try living. From here, Kyuzo establishes himself as a very aloof, but very skilled warrior. He trains the villagers in archery, and is pivotal in taking down the bandits during the first battles for Kana village. After these are victorious for the village, he disappears for a bit to do his own thing, even saving his old boss out of pity, and eventually reunites with the group to join up with them for the capital strike. In this final engagement, Kyuzo slices his way through Imperial forces and seems as skilled as ever, though is unfortunately killed by friendly fire when Katsushiro panics and tries to save Kanbei with a volley of bullets. Now these bullets do accomplish the task of saving Kanbei by shooting the man who is about to stab him. Unfortunately, Kyuzo was right behind that man, and so is also brought down. However, Kyuzo doesn't seem to be upset about this. He doesn't regret not being able to fight Kanbei, or even dying, but instead seems happy with his life, simply saying, "I'll be waiting for you, Kanbei," implying that he still looks forward to their fight, just on another plane of existence, and that in his eyes, he lived a good life, free of regrets, or at least any worth noting at this point. And this gets us to the character discussion of Kyuzo. Again, as mentioned earlier, of all the samurai, he speaks the least, but he can still teach us many things. He teaches us that actions speak louder than words, and that one needs to live for oneself, or at least take oneself into account when making important life decisions. To start with the first point, Kyuzo is a man of action more than anything else. While he seems to be at least relatively intelligent, he never spends much, if any, time deliberating or pondering. Instead, if he sees a solution readily available, he'll just go for it. He believes more in doing than thinking or talking, and while a natural loner, still works extremely well in a team setting, always contributing to the greater good. In fact, the show goes out of its way to establish this once he joins the main cast, as shortly after doing so, Kiara wonders why he never talks, to which Shichiroji replies, "He does, it's just his actions speak louder than his words." And for Kyuzo, this is truly the case, as he rarely talks, but always speaks. He takes his role seriously and he never wavers, all the while never physically saying much of anything along the way. Instead, he lets his actions demonstrate to everyone that he's quite skilled, and takes the mission quite seriously. His actions are such that, though, that we can even still make some limited insights into his character. These insights are that he does seem to have some warrior ideals and value them, at least to some extent, as he seems to loathe having to work for the amoral Amaro and Ukyo. We can see this in the expressionless faces he wears when in their company and listening to them, and in an inverse of this, how much respect he seems to have for Kanbei. While he never goes out of his way to say he respects Kanbei, we can tell that he does, because of how he works alongside him. He subordinates himself out of respect, as Kanbei is the first man to recognize Kyuzo as anything more than a tool. And while Kyuzo always sticks to wanting to duel Kanbei to the death, the fact that he professionally waits until after the mission is complete also speaks to his high ideals, and his high respect for Kanbei. There were many times in the series where Kyuzo could have drawn a line in the sand, and forced Kanbei to engage, but he never even seems to consider doing this before the completion of the mission. This, and his unflinching dedication to said mission, proved that at his core he's an honorable, or at least patient man. It also hints that he's grateful to the group and especially Kanbei for allowing him to join them, as this mission has finally allowed him to live for himself. However, while he claims to be living for himself now, his dedication to the mission and team also prove he is not inherently selfish or arrogant. On the topic of living for oneself, Kuzuo proves the importance of doing so to both himself and the viewer. Again, while he is proven not to be inherently selfish or rude, he does decide to embark on this quest for himself. And there's nothing wrong with that. He proves that doing something for oneself can be quite beneficial to both the individual and the collective, and that everyone needs to take themselves into account when making important decisions. In the beginning of the series, when Kuzuo was on a city payroll, it was obvious that he wasn't really attached to his job, or the current state of affairs. He kind of just apathetically went along with things and felt unalive as a result, letting others decide what he would do and when he would do it. After meeting Kanbei though, and feeling humanized for what seems to be the first time in a while, and stewing over his offer a little, Kuzuo decides to change his mind, and finally decides for himself. He's tired of having others decide for him, and not living for himself, and just going through the motions, and as such, he resolves to change this. And while he does technically betray those he was working alongside with, it's obvious that A, they were bad company, B, they were honorable company, and C, they never seem to really respect or value him as a person, like say Kanbei does. This kind of nullifies the bad taste of betrayal, especially after we see Kuzuo save his old boss Amaro, proving that he does indeed have a moral compass, and isn't just someone who would sell out the team when it seems convenient for him, or when it would serve his interest alone. Anyways, from this point on, Kuzuo can now be considered a new man of sorts, as he is now living under his own decisions and judgment. While he does subordinate himself to Kanbei, he does this out of respect for both Kanbei and the team. And more importantly, he is the one deciding that he will do that. While he doesn't change much as a character, we can see that he's genuinely happy and grateful for the team allowing him to, quote, try living. We know this not only from his dedication to his team and the countless extremely risky situations he puts himself in for them, but also because of the scant dialogue he does have, which does touch on this. Most important to prove this are his first and final words as a member of the Seven Samurai. His first words, of course, are his reasoning for switching sides, and those being, I thought I would try living. That he wants to try living shows that this is a man who feels as though he's been held down by the routine and boorish nature of his previous life. That this is a man who finally wants to take his own destiny into his own hands, and he's grateful for the team for allowing him to do that. As now as a member of the team, he has much more flexibility and is much more valued as a person. He has been given freedom from the old system which seemed to hold him in place simply as a tool or a attack dog of sorts. His final words are, I will wait for you on the other side, Kanbei. Something along these lines, I don't remember them exactly. The important thing though, is that these words, and the fact that he doesn't mention any regrets and dies with a smile, imply he has definitely found some sort of happiness. He has finally experienced living, and is genuinely grateful to the team for that fact. He's genuinely grateful that this group of people came along and allowed him to join them on his own accord, and that they allowed him to flourish in his own ways and along with his own ideas. He really does have no regrets, and that he does stand by his decision to join the Seven Samurai and try living for himself, as he's genuinely grateful for it. Even if he remains aloof and distant throughout the series, it is still clear he has found some sort of enjoyment out of living thanks to the Seven Samurai. He has found some enjoyment out of trying to live, as now, Kuzuo went from a man simply under the guidance and instructions and orders of a group of people that didn't care to him, to a man who could now decide things for himself. And as such, he decided to leave a bad situation, and decided to live for himself, and decided to see what he would like to do. As such, he decided to join this team on their great quest, and was happy for it, as he could finally be himself, and explore himself in his own ways. He was happy that he simply decided to try living.